Alpha King is shocked to see his maid leaning on a homeless teen. He rushes over and shadows stretched across the cobblestone streets and whispered secrets to those who dared to listen. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and smoke, and a quiet tension hung over the palace like a veil. It was a land ruled by iron will, where loyalty was prized above all, and hearts were often prisoners of duty. King Alaric walked through the palace gardens in silence, the echo of his boots striking the stones with an almost musical rhythm. His eyes, sharp and silver in the fading light, scanned the trimmed hedges and the fountains whose water shimmered like liquid crystal. Tonight, however, the garden did not hold its usual calm. Something unusual stirred in the shadows near the eastern wall. He saw her then, Seraphine, his maid, the one who had served him faithfully for years, always precise, always obedient. She knelt on the ground, her hands gently resting on the shoulders of a young boy. He looked homeless, with tattered clothes and dirt smudging his face, yet there was a strange grace about him, as if he carried something the world could not touch. For a moment, Alaric froze, caught between disbelief and something he could not name. Seraphine had never behaved like this. She had never bent so close to another human with such warmth, such tenderness. And yet there she was, leaning protectively over the boy, whispering words he could not hear from where Alaric stood. His pulse quickened. A storm of questions rose inside him, each more dangerous than the last. Who was this boy? Why was she helping him? And why did the sight make a strange, heavy ache press against his chest? Without thinking, Alaric strode forward, his cloak flowing behind him like a dark river. The boy flinched at his approach, and Seraphine stepped back instinctively, her eyes wide, shimmering with an emotion he had never seen on her face. Fear, perhaps, but also something softer, something precious. Seraphine, Alaric's voice was low, commanding, yet there was an edge of something unfamiliar and almost desperate curiosity. Who is this child? She looked up at him, and for a moment the careful mask she always wore slipped. Her lips trembled. Your Majesty, she hesitated, glancing at the boy who had ducked his head slightly. He is someone who needs help. He is alone, and I could not turn him away. Alaric's brows knit together, a storm gathering in his gaze. Alone. And you chose to bend your care to him rather than report to me. Seraphine swallowed hard, her hands clenching into fists. I thought it was the right thing, my king. He has no one, he is special. Alaric's heart stuttered at her words. Special, what did she mean? The boy's eyes, dark and deep, lifted to meet his, and Alaric felt a shiver run down his spine. There was a strange light in those eyes, an intensity that seemed older than the boy's years, as if he carried the weight of unseen worlds. The king's mind raced. Every instinct of power and command screamed that this boy was a threat, an unknown element in a life that demanded control. Yet beneath that, there was something uncomfortably compelling. He could not look away. Step aside, he ordered finally, his tone colder than he intended. I will speak to him. The boy froze, unsure. Seraphine gave him a small, encouraging nod. Slowly the boy stood, his bare feet brushing against the cool stones. Alaric studied him carefully, the ragged cloak, the eyes that seemed too knowing for someone so young, the quiet confidence in his posture. There was more to this child than met the eye. Who are you? Alaric asked. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of caution threading through it. The boy did not answer immediately. He stared at the king as if measuring him, weighing his intentions, reading the depths of a man who had never been challenged in matters of power. Then he spoke, his voice soft but firm. My name is Kale. I mean no harm. Alaric felt a flicker of irritation. No harm, and yet you trespass in my palace gardens at dusk, leaning on my maid as if you belong here. His eyes narrowed, silver glinting in the fading light. Explain yourself. Kale bowed slightly, a gesture learned from years of survival on streets that demanded respect. I have nowhere else to go. I did not come to cause trouble, only refuge. She helped me. She is kind. Alaric's chest tightened. There was something undeniable in the way Seraphine looked at Kale, a mix of concern, warmth, and something else. A bond formed in silence, a thread delicate yet strong. It made the king feel an emotion he had long denied himself, jealousy. "Kindness is not what I command here," Alaric said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Loyalty is, and loyalty must serve me first." Seraphine's lips parted slightly, but she did not answer. She only placed her hand lightly on Kale's arm, grounding him. Alaric's heart constricted at the sight. "Step back," he said again, this time more forcefully. "I must consider what to do with you, boy. You are unusual." Kale's eyes flickered, a mixture of fear and something else, an unspoken understanding that his life could hinge on this moment. "I do not wish to bring trouble, Your Majesty," he said quietly. "I only wish to live." The king's fingers tightened around the hilt of the sword at his side, though he had no intention of drawing it. And yet, the tension in the air was almost palpable. Power, desire, and fear mingled together, creating a knot in Alaric's chest he could not untangle. Seraphine stepped forward, her voice steady but soft. "He is not a threat, my king. Please trust me." Alaric turned to her, the golden light of dusk catching her hair and making it seem as if it were woven from fire. His anger warred with something much deeper, a longing he could not name. "You trust him," she did not falter. "I do, and I would risk anything to protect him." A silence fell between them, heavy and charged. The garden, once peaceful, seemed alive with shadows, moving and watching. Alaric felt his pulse quicken. This was no ordinary boy, and Seraphine was no ordinary maid. Something ancient and mysterious lingered in the air, as if fate itself had stepped into the garden to bear witness. The king's gaze swept from Seraphine to Kale again. There was a flicker of defiance in the boy, yet also fragility. A contradiction that both unnerved and fascinated Alaric. He felt drawn to the boy in ways he did not understand. A dangerous curiosity stirred, one that threatened to unravel the strict boundaries he had always imposed. "Very well," he said finally, his voice measured but low, almost a whisper. "You may stay for now, but I warn you, one misstep and you will regret it." Kale nodded, bowing again, relief flickering across his features. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will not disappoint." Seraphine exhaled quietly, a mixture of relief and worry passing over her face. She looked at the king, her eyes soft but resolute. "Thank you, my king." Alaric's jaw tightened. He wanted to look away, to dismiss the uncomfortable stirrings in his chest, yet he could not. The boy's presence had unsettled him in a way no one else ever had, and the way Seraphine had cared for him. It was as if she had opened a door to something Alaric had long denied himself. Before he could speak again, Kale moved slightly, and in a blink he was gone, vanished into the shadows of the garden as if swallowed by the night itself. Seraphine gasped, reaching out in vain, but the boy had disappeared. Alaric felt a sudden, sharp edge of anger and confusion. "Where did he go?" he demanded, but no one answered. The garden was still, save for the gentle rustling of leaves in the evening breeze. Then faintly a whisper reached him, carried on the wind. "Not yet, you will see me again." Alaric's heart thudded painfully. He did not understand the meaning of the words, but he knew one thing: this boy, this Kale, was not ordinary. And neither was the quiet intensity he had glimpsed between him and Seraphine. The king turned to her, his voice low, almost strained. "Tell me everything." Seraphine's gaze met his, her eyes shadowed with concern and something else, something forbidden. "I will, my king, but you must be ready for the truth." And in the fading twilight, with shadows stretching long across the gardens of Urindor, Alaric felt the first stirrings of a power he had never known, a power that could challenge his throne, his heart, and the very destiny of the kingdom itself. The night held its breath, and somewhere, just beyond the reach of the light, Kale watched, knowing that the story had only just begun. The morning sun had barely touched the towers of Urindor when King Alaric stood in his private chambers, the weight of last night pressing heavily on his shoulders. The memory of the boy's dark, knowing eyes and Seraphine's protective stance haunted him. He had spent hours pacing, the echo of his boots louder than the faint murmur of the servants in the corridors. His mind could not rest. The garden's shadows had whispered a truth he could not ignore. Seraphine appeared at the chamber door, carrying a tray with tea and bread, her hands steady though her face betrayed anxiety. She bowed slightly as she always did, yet the flicker of unease in her eyes made Alaric's pulse tighten. "You requested me, my king?" she asked, her voice calm but measured. Alaric gestured for her to approach. "Yes." "Sit," he said, his tone softening though his eyes remained sharp. "Last night, tell me everything about him." Seraphine hesitated. Her gaze drifted toward the window where the first golden rays of the sun touched the marble floors. "Your Majesty, it is not a simple story. Cale is different. He is not like other children." Alaric leaned against the edge of the table, his arms crossed. "Explain." Her hands clasped around the handle of her teacup, knuckles whitening. "Cale is the last heir of a family that once ruled in the northern lands. They were betrayed, hunted, and cursed. The curse followed him when his family fell. It has made him fragile yet strong in ways that are not visible." Alaric's brow furrowed. "A curse? I have heard whispers of old magic in Erendor, but this is different." "How do you know this?" Seraphine's eyes held a distant sadness. "I have known Cale for a while. Before he came to the palace gardens, I found him on the streets, alone, frightened, and he had a mark on his wrist, glowing faintly under moonlight. It is the sign of the curse that has followed his family for generations." Alaric's chest tightened. Power, danger, and mystery coiled around the boy's existence like a serpent. And yet beneath it all, something tugged at him, an almost irrational concern for this child who had dared to touch a part of his heart long thought unreachable. "Why did you not tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. "I feared you would," she hesitated, swallowing hard. "Banish him, or worse. I could not let that happen." Alaric remained silent, studying her. There was no fear in her eyes, only a resolute care that unsettled him more than any sword or army ever could. For the first time, he realized that Seraphine's loyalty had dimensions he had never seen before. It was not merely obedience. It was empathy, courage, and something that resembled love. The king's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. A palace guard appeared, bowing quickly. "Your Majesty, there is news from the northern lands. A courier has arrived." Alaric took the sealed letter, breaking the wax with careful precision. The message was brief, yet its words carried a weight heavier than any stone. "The curse has awakened. Heed the boy's presence. He is sought and danger follows. Protect him at all costs." Alaric's jaw tightened. He looked at Seraphine, who had been quietly observing him. "You were right. This boy, he is more than he seems." Seraphine nodded, her lips pressed together. "I warned you, my king. He needs protection, and he will need more than that in the days to come." Alaric stared out the window, the city below bathed in gold. His heart felt strangely heavy. For the first time, he sensed that his decisions could change not only the kingdom's future but his own fate. Later that day, Alaric decided to seek the truth directly. He left the palace under the guise of inspection, his cloak drawn tightly around him. Seraphine followed silently, not as a maid but as a guide, leading him through the winding streets where Cale had lived. The streets were narrow and shadowed, lined with crumbling stone buildings and the faint scent of smoke and bread. Alaric noticed the quiet resilience of the people, their eyes wary yet respectful of him. Yet there was an unspoken tension in the air, a fear of something unseen. He realized that Cale's presence had touched more than his own curiosity. It had stirred the undercurrents of the city itself. Finally, they reached the alley where Cale had often slept. Alaric's eyes scanned the area, noting the small scraps of cloth, the faint marks of a fire, the whisper of footprints in the dust. Seraphine knelt and touched one of the marks gently. "He has been here, not long ago." Alaric felt a pang of frustration. Why does he hide? Why not come to me? Seraphine looked up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. He fears power, and he fears those who chase him, but he does not fear kindness. The king frowned. He had never considered that fear could be more powerful than loyalty or duty. And yet, looking at the small traces of Kale's life, he realized that fear had shaped this boy's every step. Suddenly, a soft rustle behind them made Alaric turn sharply. Kale emerged from the shadows, his dark eyes wide, alert and cautious. His posture was defensive, yet there was no malice in his gaze. "You followed me," Kale said quietly, his voice carrying the faintest tremor of both surprise and recognition. Alaric stepped forward slowly, careful not to appear threatening. "I came to understand. To see the truth for myself." Kale studied him for a long moment, then lowered his gaze. "The truth is dangerous. Not everyone is ready to face it." Alaric's fingers itched to reach out to demand more, yet he restrained himself. There was a fragile tension in the air, a delicate balance that could shatter with a single misstep. "I am ready," he said simply. Kale finally looked up and something flickered in his eyes, a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Very well. But know this, the curse that follows me is older than this kingdom. It will not spare anyone who stands in its way." Alaric felt the weight of Kale's words, a chill that ran down his spine. Yet he also felt something else, an inexplicable pull, a bond forming despite the danger. He realized that he was no longer a ruler observing from above. He was a participant in something far larger than himself. Seraphine stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Kale's arm. "You do not have to face it alone," she whispered. Kale's eyes softened, and for a moment the walls he had built around himself seemed to crumble. "I have never trusted anyone before," he admitted quietly. Alaric felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. "Then begin with me," he said, his voice low but steady. "I will not turn away." The alley fell silent, filled only with the distant sounds of the city waking to a new day. Kale looked between the king and Seraphine, his mind racing with caution and curiosity. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well for now." As they prepared to leave, a sudden commotion erupted from deeper within the alley. Shadows moved unnaturally, forming shapes that seemed alive, twisting and writhing. Alaric instinctively stepped in front of Kale and Seraphine, his hand hovering near his sword, though he did not draw it. From the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked in black, eyes glinting with malice. "So, the boy has found company," the stranger said, voice sharp and cold. "Do you think you can hide him from the curse?" Alaric's jaw tightened. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure laughed softly, a sound that echoed through the narrow alley. "A messenger and a warning. Heed this, the boy is not safe. And anyone who stands with him will face the consequences." Kale stepped forward, his small frame trembling yet resolute. "I am not afraid," he said, his voice steady despite the danger. The stranger's eyes narrowed, and without another word they melted back into the shadows, leaving only the echo of their laughter. Alaric's fists clenched. He realized then that this was no ordinary threat. The boy's life, and perhaps their kingdom, was entangled with a danger far older and deeper than he had imagined. Seraphine reached for his hand, a quiet anchor in the chaos. "We must protect him," she said softly. Alaric nodded, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. "Yes, we will protect him, no matter the cost." As the three of them left the alley, a strange wind swept through the streets, carrying with it the faintest whisper. "The curse is awakening, and so is your fate." Alaric's heart pounded. He knew the path ahead would be dangerous, filled with uncertainty and trials. But for the first time, he also felt a spark of hope, a chance to forge bonds, to face shadows, and perhaps to find something he had long denied himself: trust, compassion, and the possibility of redemption. And somewhere in the twisting streets and hidden corners of Urendor, the unseen eyes of fate watched, waiting to see how the king, the maid, and the boy would confront the shadows that now surrounded them. The wind carried a chill through the streets of Urindor, whispering secrets no one dared to speak aloud. King Alaric, Seraphine, and Cale moved cautiously through the twisting alleys, their shadows long in the pale light of dawn. Though the city seemed peaceful, Alaric felt the weight of unseen eyes upon them. Every corner, every shadow seemed to pulse with danger, as if the kingdom itself warned them to turn back. Cale walked beside Seraphine, his small frame tense yet steady. Though he had agreed for now to trust Alaric, the boy's instincts were sharp. He had survived the streets for years, learned to read threats in the movement of a leaf or the faintest shift of shadow, and he knew that tonight, or perhaps tomorrow, the curse that haunted him would not rest. Alaric kept his gaze forward, but his mind could not leave Cale. The boy's presence stirred something unfamiliar in him, a mixture of protectiveness, curiosity, and something else he could not yet name. He had faced armies and traitors, but this fragile, ragged child touched his heart in ways that power and duty never had. "Cale," Alaric said quietly, his voice barely above the whispering wind, "tell me more about this curse. I must understand what we face." Cale's eyes narrowed, shadows flickering across his face. "The curse, it is old. My family angered something powerful, something that feeds on fear and loss. It follows the last of my bloodline. Sometimes it appears as shadows, sometimes as misfortune. It can twist what you see and hear. It can test your heart, and it is growing stronger." Alaric frowned, gripping the edges of his cloak. "And it will not stop until it has consumed everything it seeks." Cale shook his head. "Not everything, but those who stand in its path, they will feel its weight." Seraphine reached for Cale's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We will face it together," she said softly. Alaric's jaw tightened. He had never been so uncertain, so unsteady. The usual clarity of command felt fragile in the presence of this boy and the darkness that clung to him. Yet there was a strange clarity in his purpose now. He would protect Cale, not because of duty alone, but because his heart demanded it. As they moved closer to the forested edge of the kingdom, Alaric's horsemen awaited him, a small contingent he had trusted with secrecy. The plan was simple yet dangerous. Cale would be escorted to a hidden sanctuary, a ruined temple beyond the hills, where the curse's influence was weaker. The journey would not be easy. Darkness traveled faster than the light. The trio mounted their horses and rode through the forest, the sound of hooves muffled by the thick carpet of leaves. The forest was silent except for the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. Alaric's eyes darted constantly, every instinct alert for signs of danger. He realized that Cale's fate was entwined with his own in ways he had not yet understood. By nightfall, they reached a clearing where the ruined temple stood. Moss-covered stones jutted from the ground, and the remnants of carved pillars leaned precariously. The air was thick with magic, old and potent, a quiet hum that seemed to resonate with Cale's presence. "This is the place," Seraphine said, dismounting. "It has been safe for generations. Few know of it and fewer dare enter." Cale stepped forward, his eyes scanning the temple. "It feels alive," he murmured, "as if it remembers my family." Alaric dismounted as well, his gaze sweeping the shadows that clung to the ruins. "Then we make our stand here. Tell me, what must we do?" Cale hesitated. His gaze flickered toward the broken altar at the center of the temple. "There is a ritual. It can suppress the curse temporarily, give me strength, but it requires trust. Absolute trust." Alaric frowned. "Trust is not easily given, Cale. You ask much." Cale looked at him, the boy's dark eyes shining with something older than his years. "Then you are no ordinary king. You will need to risk everything, as will she." His gaze fell on Seraphine. "She has already risked everything." Seraphine stepped closer to Cale, her hand brushing his arm. "We face it together, whatever it takes." Alaric watched the exchange, a strange knot forming in his chest. He realized that he had underestimated the depth of bond between them, and perhaps the depth of his own emotions. He had faced enemies on battlefields, negotiated with rival kings, but nothing had prepared him for the quiet, trembling courage of a boy and a maid who dared to care for him in a way he could not command. The night deepened, and the ritual began. Cale drew strange symbols in the dust, his hand steady despite the fatigue etched across his small frame. Seraphine lit candles around the altar, their flickering flames casting long shadows across the temple walls. Alaric stood behind them, alert, sensing every tremor in the air, every shift in the darkness that seemed to press against the temple. As the ritual progressed, Cale's voice rose in a quiet chant, the words strange and melodic, echoing through the ruins. Alaric felt the air thicken, the shadows bending and twisting around them. The forest outside seemed to hold its breath, the wind still and silent. Suddenly, the candles flickered violently, and a cold, dark presence surged through the temple. Alaric's hand instinctively went to his sword, but he did not draw it. The shadows writhed and stretched, forming shapes that seemed alive, twisting toward Cale. "Stay close," Alaric commanded, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his heart. Cale's eyes shone with determination, and he continued the chant, his voice unwavering. Seraphine placed her hand on his shoulder, lending him strength. The shadows recoiled slightly, but the presence was relentless. Alaric realized then that this was no ordinary magic. This was the curse itself, ancient and powerful, testing their courage, their trust, their hearts. He felt a strange heat rise in his chest, a combination of fear, protectiveness, and something else he did not yet understand. "Do not falter," Cale whispered, his voice firm despite the strain. "You must trust me." Alaric nodded, though his mind screamed with doubt. He had always commanded, always controlled, but now he realized that control was an illusion. To protect Cale, he must surrender in part, to trust, to believe, to face the darkness not as a king, but as a man. The shadows surged again, darker and more violent. Alaric felt a cold hand brush against his mind, a whisper of despair and doubt. He shook it off, focusing on Cale, on Seraphine, on the fragile thread of hope they had formed. Then, with a final, resonant word from Cale, the shadows recoiled, dissolving into the night. The temple fell silent, the candles flickering gently once more. Cale sank to his knees, exhausted but alive. Seraphine rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she helped him up. Alaric approached, placing a hand on Cale's shoulder. "You survived," he said quietly, awe in his voice. Cale looked up at him, his dark eyes shining with a mix of fatigue and triumph. "For now," he said softly, "but the curse will not rest forever." Alaric nodded, understanding the truth in the boy's words. "Then we prepare, together." As they rested within the temple, the bond between them deepened, not just trust, but something more profound. Alaric realized that his feelings for Seraphine, for Cale, and even for the boy's strange courage were intertwining, forming a new understanding of loyalty, love, and courage. Yet the night was far from over. From the distant hills, a flicker of movement caught Alaric's eyes. Figures cloaked in shadow watched the temple from afar, their intentions unclear but undoubtedly dangerous. Cale's words echoed in his mind. The curse would test them again, and soon. Alaric felt a strange mix of fear and determination. He had faced countless threats before, but this was different. This was personal. The boy, the maid, the shadows, they were all bound to him now, and he could not turn away. Seraphine's voice broke the silence. "We should rest, my king. Tomorrow we travel deeper into the forest. There is a place where the curse is weaker. There we may learn more and perhaps find allies." Alaric nodded, though his mind remained alert. "We will travel at first light, but we remain ready. The curse is not done with us." Cale sat quietly, tracing a faint mark on his wrist. "I can feel it," he murmured. "It is restless and angry." Alaric placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we face it together. You are not alone." Cale's gaze met his, and for the first time the boy allowed a faint smile, fragile yet real. "I hope you are right," he whispered. As they settled for the night, The temple seemed to breathe around them, old magic humming softly in the walls, whispering of trials yet to come. Alaric watched the shadows dance across the stone, feeling the weight of responsibility, the pull of something deeper than duty, and the strange, unshakable feeling that their journey had only just begun. And somewhere beyond the trees, the unseen forces that had awakened with Kale's presence stirred, watching, waiting, and preparing for the moment when the king, the maid, and the boy would be tested again. The forest beyond the temple was silent, yet it seemed alive as if the trees themselves watched the travelers. King Alaric rode at the front, Seraphine at his side and Kale between them, cloaked against the early morning chill. The air carried a faint scent of damp earth and magic, old and deep, a reminder that their journey was far from ordinary. Alaric's thoughts were heavy. Each step forward felt like walking into shadows, yet the presence of Seraphine and Kale steadied him. He had faced enemies before, armies that threatened the kingdom, traitors who sought his life, and storms of politics that could crush a man. But this darkness that clung to Kale, that sought to consume him, was different. It challenged not only his strength but his heart. "Do you feel it?" Kale's voice was soft, yet it carried an edge of urgency. His dark eyes scanned the trees, always alert. Alaric nodded. "Yes." "The curse is near, we must stay ready." Seraphine reached for Kale's hand. "We will face it together, you are not alone." Kale looked at her, a faint smile breaking the tension on his face. "Thank you, I do not know what I would do without you." Alaric's chest tightened. The boy's words, so innocent yet so profound, struck a chord deep within him. He realized that protection alone was no longer enough. He had to understand, to trust, and to guide them both through the darkness. The path led them to a clearing bathed in silver moonlight. At its center stood an ancient stone circle, the ground etched with faint runes glowing faintly in response to Kale's presence. This was the place the boy had spoken of, a sanctuary where the curse's influence was weaker, where they could confront the shadows and perhaps find answers. Kale dismounted first, his small frame tense with anticipation. "Here, the curse loses strength. But it will still test us." Alaric placed a hand on Kale's shoulder. "Then we stand together. No matter what comes, we face it as one." Seraphine stepped closer, placing her hand over theirs. "Together," she said, her voice steady. The moment felt sacred, fragile yet strong. Alaric realized how much trust and courage it took for all three of them to stand in this circle, vulnerable yet united. The air shifted, and shadows began to stir, flickering at the edges of the moonlight. Suddenly, the darkness coalesced into a form, tall and shifting, as if made of smoke and sharp edges. Its presence pressed on them, cold and relentless, testing their fear, their resolve. Alaric gripped the hilt of his sword, but he did not raise it. This was not a battle of steel. It was a battle of trust, courage, and heart. Kale stepped forward, chanting words that shimmered with ancient magic. The runes on the ground glowed brighter, forming a protective circle around them. The shadow lunged, twisting and writhing, testing their defenses. Alaric felt fear rise in him, a cold weight in his chest, but he steadied himself, focusing on the boy, on Seraphine, on the bond that had grown stronger with every trial. The shadow struck at Kale, a tendril of darkness wrapping around his small frame. Kale cried out, struggling, but Seraphine moved swiftly, placing her hands on his shoulders and lending him strength. Alaric's voice rang out, commanding and firm, "Hold fast." "You are not alone, Kale." The words seemed to resonate with something deep in Kale. The boy's eyes shone with determination, and the glow of the runes expanded, pushing the darkness back. The shadow recoiled, hissing and twisting, but it did not vanish. It was relentless, a reflection of the curse that sought to consume him. Kale fell to his knees, exhausted, and Alaric and Seraphine supported him. The circle of runes pulsed with light, responding to the unity of their hearts, their trust in one another. Alaric realized something profound. The curse could not break the bond they had formed. Their courage, their loyalty, their willingness to protect one another, this was the true power against darkness. The shadow surged one final time, a last attempt to test them. Alaric stepped forward, placing himself between Cale and the darkness. "You will not touch him," he declared, his voice ringing with authority and conviction. "Not while I stand here." Cale's hands glowed as he channeled the magic of the runes, strengthened by Alaric's courage and Seraphine's unwavering support. The shadow screamed, twisting violently, then shattered into motes of black smoke that dissolved into the night air. The forest fell silent, the tension lifting like a storm passing over the hills. Cale slumped into Seraphine's arms, trembling but alive. Alaric approached, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You have survived," he said quietly, awe in his voice. Cale looked up at him, his dark eyes shining with gratitude and something else, trust. "Yes, for now, but the curse, it is not gone, only held back." Alaric nodded, understanding the truth in the boy's words. "Then we prepare, together always." As they rested in the stone circle, a gentle breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the soft hum of ancient magic. The forest seemed at peace, yet Alaric knew that challenges lay ahead. But for the first time he felt hope, not just for Cale, not just for the kingdom, but for himself. The bond he had forged with Cale and Seraphine had transformed him, awakening a part of his heart he had long denied. Seraphine brushed a strand of hair from Cale's face, her touch gentle, her voice soft. "You are safe now. Rest." Cale closed his eyes, a rare moment of vulnerability showing on his youthful face. "Thank you, both of you." Alaric watched them, the warmth of protectiveness and a strange, tender emotion filling his chest. He realized that the strength he had always relied on, the sword, the crown, the power of command, was not enough to face this darkness. Only trust, loyalty, and courage of the heart could overcome what they faced. Night gave way to dawn, and the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees. Alaric stood, looking toward the horizon. "We must continue. The curse will return, stronger each time, but together we will meet it." Seraphine and Cale nodded, understanding the journey was far from over. Yet there was a sense of renewal, a fragile hope that they could face whatever lay ahead, bound by loyalty, trust, and something deeper that had begun to grow among them. As they prepared to leave the sanctuary, Cale spoke quietly. "I have seen shadows in my dreams, places I have not been, dangers yet to come." Alaric placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we face them together. You will not be alone." Seraphine smiled softly, her hand brushing against Alaric's. "And we will protect each other, always." The three of them rode out of the forest, the morning light casting long shadows on the path ahead. The kingdom stretched before them, full of secrets and dangers, but also of possibilities. Alaric knew that his role had changed. He was no longer a king who ruled with iron alone. He was a protector, a guardian, a man who had learned the value of trust and courage in the hearts of others. And somewhere beyond the distant hills, hidden eyes watched, waiting for the moment the darkness would rise again. But Alaric did not fear it, not while Cale and Seraphine were by his side. He had learned that true power was not in fear or command, but in the bonds forged through loyalty, compassion, and courage. As the sun climbed higher, casting light across the kingdom, Alaric felt a sense of clarity he had never known. The curse was not gone, the dangers were not finished, but they had survived the first trial. And more importantly, they had discovered something stronger than fear, the strength to face the shadows together. Cale looked up at Alaric, eyes bright with hope. "I think we can do it," he said quietly. Alaric smiled, a rare, genuine smile, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. "Yes," he said, "together we can face anything." Seraphine reached out, taking both their hands in hers, forming a circle of trust and courage. The bond among them was unspoken yet unbreakable, a bond that would carry them through the trials to come, a promise written not in words, but in hearts. And so, with the forest behind them and the kingdom ahead, they rode forward, three souls bound by fate, courage, and trust, ready to face whatever shadows might rise, knowing that together they were stronger than any darkness that dared to challenge them.